Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have concerns or are seeking a diagnosis or treatment, please seek individual advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks associated with acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride.
Please drink responsibly and in moderation. Before drinking, please be sure to be of the legal drinking age for your country. We do not encourage the misuse of alcohol.
Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant.
I did it there. I did it right that time.
You did it right. Last time we had a little snafu. We had a couple snafus. That's okay.
That's okay.
I may edit those out. We'll see how that works. My goodness. It is a Monday night and we are Mondaying.
And the funny thing is I worked from home today, but I did so much work. I wrote 6 reports, saw 5 patients. I wanted to make a PowerPoint for a presentation I'm doing, but that was not happening today.
Yeah, but your head gets swimming after a while, like being in front of a screen and doing all the things.
I find that, like, even though I don't like doing that many reports in one day, you kind of get into like a flow of it. And so you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And like, I do my reports in a process. So first I check the data and then I just put it aside. Then I proofread the background and everything. Then I put it aside. Then I go and I'm like, okay, now I'm writing the summary. So like I'd already done those first 2 parts of it. So this was like the final part, which is easier to kind of flow through a little bit more.
I don't know. I wish that whatever was in my brain could just go on the computer or whatever I say out loud to the patient. I mean, there are AI scribes.
I was going to say
not
there's
good enough for me.
Talk to type. That is a thing.
No, I know. Not that. I just wish like it just documented I don't know, for me. I just wish.
I mean, my therapy notes, not that I have that many therapy patients, but those I've got down to a science, which are very succinct and short, and I can bang those out in like 5 minutes each. But
that's nice.
I write average 20-page reports, at least 10 a week. So that's why I break it up into parts, because I could not do all of that in one sitting.
Yeah. I had a patient the other day she was a patient of ours like once for like a minute. It's a patient who required translation. So I spent a lot of time with them and had a translator and initial visit, and then didn't see him for a long time. Then they came back, they were sick, and they're like, oh, I went to another primary in between because I thought that you were like tired of talking to me or something.
Aww.
And I was like, I never do. Like I spent a lot of time with this person.
Yeah.
And then this time I spent a lot. And then they came back, they're like, oh, you're going to be I'm going to come for a physical again. So they came and I spent a lot of time with them.
Okay.
But like, I don't know what else you need from me. Like I spent so much time in their note. They brought me like 20 separate documents of records and I reviewed all of them. And we like answered all the questions. And I'm like, I'm not the person who cuts anyone off. So I don't know what you wanted from me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm tired. Maybe it's the end of the day. Maybe when I'm my hands out the door and they're like, wait, one more thing. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I come back.
I think sometimes people just want to know that somebody listened.
Yeah. And maybe it's harder through translation. Maybe that's what is
Probably
more tricky, because it really is. It's a 3-way conversation. It just is what it is. And she speaks enough English and I speak enough Spanish that we can like get a lot of stuff. But like, there's little nuances that I want that other person there for help. I just felt bad because it was like, I pride myself on not, like I'm giving patients as much time as they can. And I was like, I documented a heck of a lot. And I spent like a lot of time on their note.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, I get it.
I don't want them to feel bad, but
I have that a lot. Like today, one of my patients, it was telehealth. She was delightful, but then she had her adult daughter in there, and then the daughter was like talking about her own issues. I'm like, can we like focus on
one
your
person
mom,
at a time,
why she's here? And it was fine, and it worked out well. And I think they were happy that I, took the time and sat with them. But sometimes it's like, this is a lot more than just what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And like wellness, technically your wellness visit, this is for all of you people out there. I love you all, my fans, our friends, our mixies, as we call you. Your wellness visit is technically supposed to be a wellness, which means you have 0 complaints. It's not meant for you to save up all of your complaints and come in with a list. Those are supposed to be a problem visit.
Right.
Your insurance gives you a free wellness visit every year with no copay. But then once you have complaints, then I have to dual bill a complaint visit and a wellness visit together. Same physical time period that we did that, but then you're going to have a copay for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more pressed for time because we're trying to do all the wellness stuff and that stuff in the same day. So do yourself a favor. Just sprinkle those visits around when you need them to
Yeah.
save them up. I'm willing to
Yeah.
help. Just, you know,
Well,
because
and there's also lots of people who don't go for their annual wellness check.
Right.
So that's something you should also stay on top of.
yes, come for your wellness. I'll do it. And I do listen to it all and deal with it all on that visit, but don't get mad if you have a copay either. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
not my fault. It's the insurance. Blame them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of my people today, we finished the whole appointment and she's like, oh, I changed my insurance. It's like, well, you're going to talk to our admin about that now because luckily I don't have to touch any of that. But now I don't know if she's going to have a copay for our visit because she didn't tell me till the end of the session.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's tough. But also people, it's not their fault that they aren't explained. And I find my Medicare
True.
population, nobody explains to them what these insurance is. It's not like in the old days where you had just good old Medicare and a supplement. Now there's all these managed plans and then your drug part of it. Nobody tells them that they have a deductible. And
nobody tells us for the insurance we pay for out of pocket, all those nuances.
You know, and it is. I feel bad. Like I do. We do a lot of, I'm very lucky. My staff is very, very patient and really tries their best to explain and help these patients through things, you know, with their insurance because they don't explain it to them. Anyway.
Well, along with that, I had an insurance issue today. So, my deductible restarted in January, as everyone does. And I had to go for an MRI. She was like, great, that'll cover my whole deductible.
Yeah, right.
Well, I finally got billed for it and I really didn't have to pay that much. So I'm like, by this point, I've definitely made my deductible because I saw other doctors since then. But I was like, I was hoping that would be a one and done. And it was not. Which, like I said, it's a good thing. I have to pay less. I'm not complaining. But I was just like, oh, I thought it was all handled.
I can't complain about what I pay out of pocket nowadays because honestly, the insurance loses money on me because the medication I'm on is very, very, very expensive. I'm on biologics. So,
girl, I'm going to buy us both the T-shirt that has a skeleton and it says, I met my deductible.
Yes.
We're both there. We both meet our deductibles every year.
For all those healthy people out there, I'm glad you're there to, absorb.
To balance the situation.
Cost.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We're all here.
Look, we've both been paying for insurance for a very long time before we really needed to use it. So we did our part.
That's true. Plenty of, 38-ish years until I started running up the bills. And then
and now it's
downhill.
Just like, exactly. That's why I'm like, oh, I need to squeeze in sinus surgery this year. One less thing to pay for.
Let's get it done.
I already met my deductible. Can they do it both? Can they do it while they're in there doing other stuff? I'll pay extra. I don't care. Get it all done. I just don't want another downtime recovery. Yeah. I'd rather just recover all at once.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that coordination isn't going to happen.
Look, it's taking them 3 weeks to coordinate just for the one area of surgery.
Let alone. Yeah. All right. So do you want to hear about my stuff today? Because this is the fun part because the rest of it's not so fun, people. It's important, but it's not. It's important, silly, and fun.
And before you get into it, I know that she listens, so shout out to our friend Jackie.
Yes.
Because she briefly did some of what we're talking about
today. And I remember that. I remember her telling us that. So my cocktail is actually super simple. It's called the Nurse Aperitif because it's an ode to our nurses, which we love. And it is super, super simple. It's literally you throw some dry vermouth in a glass and you top it with some club soda. And they said to put a cucumber in it. So I did. And I will bring it in front of the camera. Oop, and I'm hitting my microphone. There's my little cucumber.
Nice.
And it's just kind of like, I've never just drinking.
You've never just drinking? Okay, drinking.
I never just drank vermouth fairly on its own. It's usually in a martini.
I was going to say, what does it taste like by itself?
It is technically a type of wine. It tastes minerally, sort of. I don't know.
I don't know what those words mean.
It's light.
It tastes like sucking on a penny? I don't know what minerally tastes like.
Sort of. I don't know, minerally. The cucumber complement. If you can kind of get the cucumber-ish vibe in there.
Okay.
It doesn't taste like a whole lot. It's very mellow. But I never thought of putting just that in club soda, but it's actually pretty nice. So yeah, it's supposed to be 3 ounces specifically of the vermouth and then the club soda on top. I just kind of filled my glass with ice and sort of eyed it and it tastes pretty good.
Nice.
Not bad.
Yeah. Simple.
Yeah, simple. You can't get easier than that. I'd never heard of it, but this is apparently a real known drink, the Nurse Aperitif.
Okay.
Not one that was made up by anyone. It's on real things, no AI.
On real things.
Apparently, it is a vermouth-based drink popularized in modern cocktail culture.
So,
Simple, balanced, herbal, precise.
very nice. Am I wrong isn't an aperitif supposed to be like an after dinner drink?
Or is it before dinner drink?
Yeah, it's like one of those. No, like I'm being legit.
It is.
Like,
No, it
it's
is.
one
It's
of
a
those.
before or after or a palate cleanser or a
Yeah.
something. It's not a dinner drink. Yeah, I don't know if an aperitif is a before or after. But yes, it is meant, I think, to like separate courses or something.
Mhm.
So what we're covering is the Pitt, which we've covered once before about violence in healthcare. But the Pitt has so many things on there. I could literally cover 1,000 diagnoses just from that show. But this, I saw the chatter online before I actually saw the episode because I was behind by a couple. I've now seen them all, but I was behind at the time. And I knew what it was about just from what people were commenting. And I was like, you know what? I think this is something I have to cover. And it's season 2, episode 7 and 8. I believe it's 2 episodes. It's covered through where they cover a very serious subject. So it's, if we know about the Pitt, if you live under a rock, I'm sorry, but even if you don't watch it, you kind of know what it is.
It's a medical show.
It is. It's a very, very busy ER in Philadelphia. Noah Wiley with a insanely lovely
In
cast.
Philadelphia or Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh. Why did
I was going to say, I thought that's why it was
I'm
called
sorry.
Pitt.
The Pitt. Correct. You are correct. My brain and my mouth are not matching up at the moment.
It happens.
Now I got to think of it. Hold on. I got to look up the woman, the actress who plays the nurse, because she is absolutely amazing. So Catherine Lanasa plays Dana Evans, and she is phenomenal in both seasons of this. But this episode is it for her to me because she takes and gives some humanity and seriousness to what we're covering. In this season of the Pitt, this takes course over one day. So this is the way the Pitt works, is each episode is 1 hour of a shift with like sort of a 2-hour buffer. So there's usually 14 episodes for a 12-hour shift. This one is at 1 p.m. and this is supposed to be 4th of July. So if you could imagine all the things they've already dealt with between, 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. on 4th of July. Firework injuries, alcohol, there's some woman who's sunburned. There's a nun with gonorrhea in her eye. There's a woman who's dying of metastatic cancer. I mean, there's just everything going on.
I'm just thinking back to my DV days, and 4th of July is one of the top holidays for people to beat their wives up.
Yeah.
But you know what the first 2 are? One's coming up and one just passed.
Memorial Day and Christmas?
Mother's Day and Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, I could see the alcohol consumption and sport anger. Mother's Day. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Fun times.
So basically in the shuffle of this like crazy ER that's going on, sort of a quiet woman gets put in to be seen, and she's being seen after she was at her friend's house and there was a group of people there and she was sexually assaulted.
Does she know who it was?
Yes, it was somebody who was a friend. Big quotes I'm putting here. Obviously, that is not your friend.
Well, I was going to say, not that it's ever good, but it's a different layer of bad when it's someone you know.
Yeah. So,
because you assume that you would trust them, and then that happens.
Right. So you don't get into a whole lot of detail about her story because she's quiet. She doesn't want to speak about it. And they explain to her that it's just important that they do this very particular exam, which we'll go into detail about, because if she does want to pursue legal action, she can, and then she would have this evidence collection. She doesn't have to, but if we do this now, we have this preserved.
Yeah,
so
they don't, evidence expires.
Right. They don't get into the details of like her story. Like I said, she's very closed and very quiet about it. And they give her that space too, which is very important. So the way they do this is there's no other SANE nurses on shift. And technically Dana is the charge nurse of the entire
Maybe we should
ER.
define SANE so they don't think we're talking about sanity SANE.
Yeah, yes, I will get into my whole educational part will be on what a SANE nurse is. But yes, a SANE nurse is somebody who is trained specifically for sexual assault exams. So there's nobody else on shift who's certified, and they don't want to make this young woman sit until the next shift when somebody who certifies in. So Dana, even though she is supposed to be running the entire show, is going to take her time to dedicate to do this exam because she believes in the importance of it. And she has a young nurse who's like wide-eyed, literally day one, who's training on this crazy day. And she has her with her and she sort of teaches her as she goes. Even though, she's not necessarily certified, she's teaching her about the importance of this and how to handle somebody who's been through something like this. They just do this so well in this episode. There's moments where the woman has second thoughts or she's too overwhelmed and she wants to take a walk, and they're like, okay. So Dana can't leave the room where the evidence she's collected is, but the other young nurse goes with a walk with the woman and then comes back. And it's just sort of how they handle every little step of the way, and with her dignity, with taking things seriously, but making her feel comfortable. It's just really, I mean, of all of the crazy moments of this show, it's sort of a quiet moment, if that makes sense. They take her in like a quieter area of the ER where they don't think there's going to be any interruptions. And they know ahead of time this is something that's going to take hours. They have to do each step slowly. They have to sign off on things very specifically. Again, they have to tell the patient they could stop at any time. And again, that it doesn't require immediate reporting to the police, but that it's here if you need it. They show that like they have to have her stand sort of on like what we call a chuck, which is like a pad, and take her clothing off, how they use
that way
swabs.
any hairs that fall are collected.
Anything,
like that.
exactly. And how they bag the clothing, how they use swabs in different areas of her body, whether it's the actual like vaginal swabs, anal swabs under her fingernails, in her mouth, the way they take pictures of any bruises that she has. They do have the physician come in the beginning for just physical injuries like bruises, things like that. And then she leaves and the SANE nurse is running the show from there. There's also an advocate available. So they have these companies or these foundations and things that one of them does come at one point and, you know, offer support groups and things like that. And it's an advocate essentially that she has available to her if she needs them. Leave her with some pamphlets, resources of what she can do for follow-up. So again, they take it very slow in the chaos of the rest of this emergency room. And they show like Dana, who's usually this tough as nails nurse, and how she can be like steady, but not cold or detached, just like sort of your rock, if that makes sense, like grounded. And how the student or recent graduate nurse, you know, sort of emotionally is, you know, a little bit suffering with the gravity of like this whole thing. But she really holds it together because that's what you have to do for this person who's just been through this. So the real hero of all of this is this SANE nurse. So SANE stands for S.A.N.E, Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner. These are registered nurses who receive specialized forensic training to care for survivors of sexual assault. So they're available in emergency rooms. Forensic science, trauma-informed care, legal documentation is kind of everything that they do. It's not simply what we call doing a rape kit. There's a lot of steps involved that are not just collecting specimens. So, you know, they comprehensive head to toe physical exam, documenting even very subtle injuries, little things that maybe a scratch here, you know, a little bruise there. Like we said, collecting the trace evidence, and then the very, very strict chain of custody procedures. So a chain of custody is where each thing is signed off and bagged very specifically. And there's a point in this episode and later in another episode where she's pissed because there's still stuff in the fridge from the last kit. And there's a period of time where the police were supposed to have picked it up and it was still sitting there. And she's like the cops come in for some other patient for some other thing. She's like, you're taking this. And she's like mad. She's like, give these dignity to these women.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what we feel like people hear a lot about, these untested rape kits that are out there. There's this backlog. It's similar to that, where once you do the exam and everything, there's other steps, and it's not necessarily the person doing the exam that follows those other steps. So there's other people involved, and if they drop the ball, then that's why some of this stuff kind of lingers.
Absolutely. Part of what they do too, which we're going to get into more detail in another episode, but is prophylactic medications. So that would be post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia are the big ones that they would medicate them for. Of course, offering emotional stabilization and resources, and then explaining the legal options without coercion, as we talked about in our last episode, just explaining what their options are. So there's actually an international association of forensic nurses, and they define the SANE nurses as trained specifically to provide comprehensive care to sexual assault patients, including forensic evidence collection and courtroom testimony when needed. They're medical providers, but they're also forensic specialists, and sometimes they are witnesses. So let me give you we've covered some of what they do in the exam, but let's talk about each step. So first thing is consent. You have to have consent from the victim to do anything you're going to do. And each step along the way requires permission. And the patient can decline any singular portion of it. They can stop, they can pause, they can decide they're done and they don't want to do this anymore at any step of the way. But, each step you tell them what you're going to do and then you ask their permission. Next thing is medical stabilization. Of course, injuries. I mean, this woman in the show had very minor, little bruise on her and that was it. But there can be severe injuries for something like this. So medical stabilization is a very important part of this. Any urgent injuries, those of course have to be dealt with first, and then they deal with the forensic part of it. They need to take a very detailed history, focusing on the assault, and obviously only as much as the patient wishes to share, but more detail is helpful. A head-to-toe exam, like we said, documentation of bruising, abrasions, tears at the vaginal, anal, mouth, anywhere else that there might be signs of that forced assault. And then we said the swabs, it says here, depending on where the reported contact was. So I guess maybe they don't swab every area if you say, no, that wasn't involved. Fingernail scrapings, clothing collection, photography for each of those areas that may show scratches or bruises, and then alternate light sources for bodily fluids. We've seen that on some of our, cop shows. Everybody knows what the blue light with the stuff that lights up, but that's a real thing. And so they can know if there's other body parts that maybe have fluids on them that you can't see with the naked eye, to collect swabs from there. And then STI testing is offered as well as prophylaxis. STI testing, typically the day of any event, is a baseline of what you have basically before this event happened. It's not going to show that quickly. And then you can be prophylactically treated for, like we said, HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia. Planning safety, if this is somebody making sure they have resources for what to do if this person shows back up or contacts them.
I have a question. Given the states of things in the current political climate, are they still doing prophylactic, like morning after, things like that?
So I think that's going to be very much state dependent.
Okay. That's
absolutely. In states where it is legal, absolutely. And there's many states, including our state, New Jersey.
I was going to say, it is legal in New Jersey.
It is over the counter. Yeah. A pharmacist can give it to you without a prescription. Mm-hmm. But yes, if you're in an emergency room like this, if it's legal in your state, it would be offered as part of it. Absolutely, positively. But this whole process can take 3 to 6 hours. Mm-hmm. So it is not a fast thing.
And that's assuming that the SANE nurse is there and available.
Is there, exactly. And that's what you worry too. And that's kind of why Dana did this. Number one, for the poor woman's dignity to be there, sitting there, but also somebody's more likely to change their mind if they're sitting there. Like, maybe I shouldn't, Yeah.
Like, our friend Jackie did it briefly, and I know one of the issues that she had was that it was kind of like an on-call situation.
Yeah.
But she still had her full-time job. So, sometimes she could not go on call, or sometimes, there were other things happening. And so I'm sure there's more than one nurse on call, at a time, and it's whoever responds. But those sort of things that I think when you're on the other side of it, when you're there seeking those services, you don't necessarily realize those other logistics of it.
Exactly. You just assume anyone can just do this, but this is very, very specific training, which is the next kind of thing we'll get into. But basically, it can be exhausting for the patient, the provider. It is a long, drawn out process. Everything has to be labeled, sealed, documented. Like we said, that chain of custody, because if that chain of custody is not correct, it can be challenged in court, and you don't want that to happen. Certification. How do you become a SANE nurse? What does this entail? So again, it's that International Association of Forensic Nurses. You have to hold an active RN license. So there are different types of nurses, at least in our state, and in most states in the U.S. There's an LPN. Sometimes they're called, I think, an LVN in some states, but in New Jersey, that's a licensed practical nurse. They have certain things that they are capable of. And then there's a registered nurse, which is one step above that, which has a little more things that they're capable of legally being allowed to do. So you have to be an RN. You have to have at least 2 years of clinical experience. It doesn't have to be specifically in this. It could be in any area on the floor as a nurse. At least 40 hours of didactic education, so classroom training that you'll go through specifically for this. You have to have supervised clinical preceptorship hours in this, meaning that you'll be side by side with somebody who's already trained. and about 300 hours of SANE-related practice within 3 years. So it's pretty in-depth, it should be. And there are kind of two certifications. There's an adult one and a pediatric one. So there's the SANE-A, it was adult, SANE-P for pediatric. And this certification is a national competency standards that you have to meet. But there's still a shortage. I mean, there's a lot available. I don't know that everybody even thinks about this or even has maybe the emotional ability to do this. I mean, I think this takes a very special person.
Well, and I think part of the shortages is, like we were just saying, these are nurses who are still actively working as nurses also.
Right. They have other jobs. This isn't a full-time gig.
Yeah, this is a side gig.
Extra
so it's like,
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's healthcare shortages in everything.
In general, yeah.
So, of course, things that require an extra for certification or maybe don't have, the ease of making a couple bucks isn't always the thing you're going to go and get an extra certification in. So, some rural areas have nobody like within a huge radius, like nobody to do this. Some patients have to like travel hours to get to somebody. And think about, like we said, if you're sitting in the ER for a couple hours, possibly changing your mind, what if you have to drive hours to get to the person to do this exam? I think there's a lot of people who maybe don't even do it because of those barriers.
Yeah. And putting this in context, you're going to a hospital to seek help after this very traumatic situation.
Oh, yeah.
And then even if you're working with the best possible people, the exam itself can inherently be traumatic. I mean, getting a gynecological exam is not fun, and that's, standard practice.
Right. And
so this is much more in depth than that. And
absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about, God forbid, like the pediatric ones, they've not been through that standard exam even before, and they now have to do this.
Yeah. And I would imagine, like, I know that we're focusing on females here, but I'm sure there's SANE nurses are trained on doing the same sort of assault kits on males as well. So,
absolutely. Anybody can be sexually assaulted. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm focusing on that because that is, I guess, the more common thing, and that's what's portrayed in this. But absolutely, there are men can be sexually assaulted as well. And I'm sure that the protocol does very, very similar things. It would just be following that list. And then there are some emergency departments who don't have anyone on call, like you said, and so they can use non-SANE trained staff to do some of these things, but it doesn't hold the same weight and it doesn't have the same training,
legal backgrounds. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know how that holds up if it does come to court.
And I'm just thinking, because I work with a very specialized population, luckily there are now more and more emergency rooms, doctors' offices that specialize in treating people with special needs, like people who may have cognitive impairments or autism or things like that. And so I can just imagine having to do that sort of exam with those folks. You need even additional training.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, those are the folks who can be at a higher risk just due to the level of their disability.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different types of people that this may affect, and I guess you would have probably some sort of an advocate specifically for, autism or a developmental disability, but then the SANE nurse would still just being this,
or even someone who doesn't speak English, or someone who uses sign, or someone who's deaf. There's lots of different things that can happen. We do know, unfortunately, the statistics show that if you have some sort of other impairment, you are more susceptible to an assault in general.
So on a side note, in the Pitt, they also had a patient in this season who was hearing impaired and only used ASL. And so they showed some of the challenges of trying to use that. And then the translator iPad wasn't working and they're trying to write, and then somebody knows little sign language and the barriers. And then imagine trying to do that with this serious of an exam. That was a separate case, but think about all the things that come in. So, it's interesting. So for decades, sexual assault scenes on television and movies always focused on the crime or the court, but not that quiet place in between. And that's what this is, which takes that very particular care. So I love just the way the show took the speed down. It could be chaos everywhere. But whenever they showed the scene of her doing this, it was that quiet moment, which really lended to the importance of it.
Yeah. I also think when you've been through a trauma, whether it's sexual assault or a really bad car accident or something, it just feels surreal. It feels in your life like everything has slowed down and is not moving at the regular pace of time. So it's kind of good that they give that space for this exam as well, because emotionally you may not be catching up to what things are going on around you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, they took the time in the episode, like they showed sort of the autonomy of the patient, how precise the exam had to be, like the examiner, how emotionally grounded they had to be, because that's gotta be hard too, like not to feel what the other person is feeling, and just how professional these nurses are. So it's not the flashiest of titles. It's not sort of like I'm the super cool nurse with this, thing, but it's so important. So
It is.
if anybody's interested in that, like look into getting these classes done. You could be such a resource. It's not something that I can be trained in. So this is very specific to nursing. So I would implore anyone who's interested in this and being helpful for these survivors to look into it. It was, it's a heavy one, but it's super important. And it was done. The Pitt does a lot of things right, but this, I feel like they did really, really right. They really did.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, a lot of kooky other diagnoses in this. It's interesting too, because the whole even concept of like I don't even know how to verbalize this, but of feeling, that someone's a victim and then trying to sort of get this story from them and collect what's important. I think even, we're talking about the nursing end, but to the detective end, the people on that end who have to collect, to do their interviews and things like that, it really does take a very special person to be able to do that in a way that is just mindful of everything,
Yeah. I think part of it too, obviously I don't do this stuff to that extent, but I definitely deal with folks who are talking about a lot of difficult things in their life and maybe reliving them as they're talking about it, is being very practical. Like, I can't tell you how many times in a week I tell someone that it is okay to cry in front of me. I can handle it. Because I think that's something a lot of people, there's a lot of shame with tears. Even if, somebody punched you in the face and you're tearing up, you're like, I don't want to cry. I tell people, I think a lot of times people hide those emotions or hide those feelings because I think the other person is going to get weirded out by it, or they don't want to be judged. And so I think having somebody who can sit with those difficult feelings or sit in those awkward moments and say, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
That is just kind of something that you need outside of the training, just being able to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know one of our episodes, you gave us some stats on like how many women have been sexually assaulted in some way, shape, or form. And so this is not, a taboo or unique thing.
Yeah.
This is, if you look in a room, how many people, if you go by the statistics, have been affected by this? But there's so much like quiet and shame. And so that's why it was really nice that they brought it to light in this kind of a way.
Yeah.
I have a story that I'm not going to come on the podcast and say I was sexually assaulted. I'm that guy.
To say,
but
I can handle it. I can sit with the uncomfortable. I can sit with the hard things.
And I think you know this from a long time ago. Do you know about the Seton Hall? Well, I said I blew up the name of the college, but everyone knows where I went to school. Library story?
I vaguely, but
so when
I've worked in enough spaces where sexual assault happens quite often. Yeah. Remember, I worked in a prison. So.
Yeah. So when I was in undergrad, I was sitting studying, and there's this one, it was pretty early. I think it was like before dinner time maybe. So it wasn't super crowded in the library. And this one floor is usually very quiet. And we had these desks with like cubbies. So it was like a desk, but it had like a thing around it to kind of keep you locked in. That's the modern kids term, locked in. And so there was a row against this wall, and then there was a row going, I'm showing my arms for the podcast, but there was a row going along the other wall. So I was at the corner.
To the right.
I was in the corner with my back sort of to one wall, and to the right of me, one wall. It was really odd. This guy came and he sat in the desk literally next to me. Like we were in the same corner when it was empty. Like there was lots of places you could have been. And it was weird and it was awkward. And I was just like, let me just finish this chapter. And I'm going to scoot, to go to dinner. I'm like, put my head down. And he started trying to talk to me. And I was like, come here often kind of thing. I was like, yes, freaking library. I'm trying to just like finish what I'm doing. And then I start hearing a clink and I hear rustling. And then I'm like, this person's less than a foot from me. And I'm like, what is going on? And I sat back, and he had his pants down and was handling himself. And then I put my head forward into the cubby, and I was like, holy shit, like, what do I do? Because I'm so afraid that if I try and run anywhere, that I'm going to get grabbed. So
And
when
I'm terrible
finally,
because I'm like, you're in a library, you do the anti-library thing, you scream.
Here's the problem. All the people in the desk are downstairs. I'm on a floor that's like nobody. Like there's
And the library's
nobody.
quiet, so they will hear you scream.
True. But I was like, all right, I'm going to just get up and walk. And I guess he had gotten up right before that second. And then I got up and I ran down to the front desk. And then I'm like going to the front desk, like, oh my God, this is what's going on. He did it again. And I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, this happened. A couple people have had this encounter. I'm like, and like, what are we doing here? Campus security came, took my statement, didn't call the police.
Yeah.
Didn't call the police. I was like,
and I'm sure
that's a
in
crime.
their head, he didn't touch you. So he didn't do anything.
So I went back to my dorm room.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying what their excuse was.
I went back to my dorm room and I called the police.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave my statement and I recognized him because he had a class with my roommate. And I found out his name and I found out when his class was. And I watched him perp walk right out of his classroom because I was like, this is the last person that this is going to happen to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he got convicted, but then I don't know what happened after that.
Yeah.
And then there was like some sort of a group little suit suing Seton Hall because they did nothing.
Yeah. And
I
they
got
about
like
it.
$2,000 back in, 1999 or 2000. That felt like a lot of money to me, which I should have really like done something, but whatever, it was pro bono and I didn't pay a lawyer and they gave me $2,000 because they sued the school. But like, luckily, like I was okay mentally, whatever. But like, I could see somebody being like, I can't go back in the library.
Yeah.
I can't study. Can't, you know what I mean? Like, think about that. And I was like, how did the campus police not call the real police? Like, cause they're just fake police. It was unbelievable to me. And that was just like on your normal campus. So imagine all the other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's in a public place that happened not in public places. And then they didn't call the police.
All the things that happen after a frat party or all the things that happen on a typical Friday night or that happen on spring break. And it just, and I think part of it too is I'm not going to go down the, anti-male F the patriarchy thing. But I do think, like I said before, men can be victims too. I think there's this idea, especially in college campuses, oh, we're young, we're just having fun, we're partying. So the people on the other end of it who are doing the bad things, I don't think they're realizing the gravity of what they're doing either. And then when it goes ignored or not followed, it's like, well, what's going to stop you from doing it again?
Again, exactly. College campuses are just rife with this. I mean, that's exactly what it is. But it was just such a unique story that I was like, I can't believe. But like I said, I was like, this isn't going to happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
I will find them. And we didn't have internet stalking back then, but if we did, I would have found his ass on the internet, stalked him until I figured out what his name.
You don't fuck with terror is what I hear.
And you think like cameras and such, like, I don't know, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, and that's a topic for another episode, but that sort of behavior is very different than, a bunch of people get drunk at a party and end up in bed together and one person thought they were into it, the other person wasn't,
Right.
There are very different motives and situations for those kind of behaviors.
So this was considered, though, criminal sexual contact because he spoke to me. If he didn't speak to me and he was just in the library and never spoke to me, it would, I think with some of the other people, they just happened to walk past and see him. But because he came up face to face, spoke to me, then sat down, they think that was the charge that really actually meant something.
Yeah.
So
and
it's interesting.
The nuances of the law are very complicated and some of it is antiquated, some of it is not, but
right.
Yeah, there's a lot to that as well.
Yeah, but craziness. And we really just super appreciate the people who work to help put these people away and support the victims above everything else and just have that quiet moment with them.
Yes, and support the survivors because...
Exactly. Well, yes, victim, let's call it survivors.
I mean, some people choose the word victim and that's their choice. Others choose survivor, so we'll speak to both. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. But those SANE nurses, we super appreciate you. So, and get out there. Someone
we
go
appreciate
get certified.
all the nurses.
We do. But this episode is a little extra special. But listen to our episode about Kristen had as the women. That was military nursing. I'm sure there'll be plenty of nursing topics I'm going to cover because there are BFFs and we cannot do this without them.
That is true. Yeah.
Every single person in this healthcare system is important, and we appreciate what you guys do.
We do.
All right. Sorry it was a heavy one, but super important. So thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Medical Media Mixer podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps others find the show. Want to keep the conversation going? Follow us on social media. We're at Medical Media Mixer Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and on Pinterest, the Medical Media Mixer board.
If you'd like to support the show and help us grow, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast, and on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. If you have a topic idea, feedback, or just want to say hi, send us an email at medicalmediamixer@gmail.com. You can also stream all of our episodes and find more info on our website, medicalmediamixer.podbean.com. We're available on all major podcast platforms, so no matter where you listen, we're there. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep mixing medicine and media.